Life is a pain in the ass.
Whoa, making a video. Yeah, might be a long video. We'll see how it goes. So the intro should be there. It should be an intro, right? I took the clip from Funny Girl's video, Funny Girl a Bowl. So link below. Anyway, she did a parody. Yeah, you can't really parody my videos. But anyway, she did it. She accomplished it. Anyway, and yeah, it was pretty funny. And you know, I see something useful in this. You know, in terms of maybe people could actually write a song this way. You know, just going back and forth and improving on the other person's work. So it almost seems like a doable thing. But you know, something for a future date. Anyway, I did do a talk show, kind of radio show kind of thing. This website, Not Straight TV. Yeah. So anyway, they had some new show called Countercultural. So I guess I was episode 2. Anyway, there's that James Polk guy. You've probably seen him before. And this other guy, Will something or other guy. Sorry, but, you know. Anyway. Yeah, you know, they're interesting people. So anyway, they do this show, and you know, it's all kind of well produced and all that kind of crap. And so anyway, I was on that show. So I'll post some clips that I have, and there's an MP3 link also below to everything I recorded. Anyway, a couple hours worth. So there's only like an hour and a half of real show or something like that. Something, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it went pretty well, and yeah, it was okayish. Usual Inmendham conversational points. You know, I mean, and, you know, if it wasn't an Inmendham subject, I made it an Inmendham subject. Didn't do anti-natalism. I figured that was going a little too far, but anyway, it was, yeah, it really went quite well. So other subjects. So anyway, so yeah, I'll post some clips after I'm done doing whatever I'm doing here, and then there should be something in the background. I think I have some golfing clips or something, so we'll throw this in there and edit it all the way, so to speak. So anyway, so I had 3 videos that I thought were pretty good videos, and you know, it's been sort of, you know, my browser does this every now and then. Everything just disappears down here, you know, on the taskbar. Oh, there, it's back. Good. See if it stays. Anyway, it's sort of annoying. There's always a glitches, you know. Still Windows XP, but, you know. Anyway, so I just thought I would mention these videos just because it sort of annoyed me. The comments were just stupid on them. The ratings were poor. And I thought they were really good videos. So I'm going to sit there and reiterate the points made in them. So anyway, there's one called Headshots. Alright, so this is for Vloggerdome Headshots. And, you know, I just sort of metaphored our brain as this reflexive network and used guns as a metaphor. But you could use, you know, any kind of reflexive device. Can't think of catapults. You know, doesn't really catapults. Dominoes would probably be either the simplest way to put it. But dominoes implies a preset pathway, and even though there is a preset pathways in our brain, you know, the dominoes are all set. That's sort of the thing you want to imply here, is that one domino can hit lots of different dominoes just depending on how it's positioned. So then you get into this nuance of positioning a domino and twisting it and turning it, and that just adds complexity to the metaphor, in my opinion. Where guns is just so simple. It's, you know, trigger, bullet comes out, and it's just about where it's aimed. So, I mean, aiming a gun and turning a domino. See, I mean, they're same thing, but, yeah, the gun metaphor seems easier for at least my brain, to see the clarity of it, of what's happening. Is that the bullet comes out and it can hit the trigger of another gun, or it can load another gun, you know, that kind of thing. But anyway, that's sort of what we're made out of, and I thought it was a good video, and the comments are all crap. It was just really irritating. Alright, so the other one was Draft Constitution. So yeah, this one, you know, wasn't, you know, I didn't get into depth about this subject, but I mean, it's a really important subject. No one pays much attention to it. But it's this whole idea of the nature, the fundamental nature of our problems in the world. You know, there's stuff blowing up and whatever happening. is this problem that we don't have any functional way to deal with our hostilities towards each other and our disputes, our disagreements. And there's no, like, sense, anyway, of a fair fight. Like, you got your fair shot, you either win or you lose. And, yeah, there's a real sense that you're not getting your fair shot. You're not getting your fair voice. You're not being heard. You're not being allowed your opportunity to humiliate your adversary properly. And that creates this need, in a sense, to go guerrilla, to take it street. And then there's that whole problem of our violent nature and our tendency to solve problems with violence. And how can you complain about the terrorists that do it when we do it all around the world, when we commit acts of terrorism every day, defending ourselves? Well, these people are going to defend themselves too as individuals, with the same kind of rationalizations and justifications, the necessity of their violence, like our justifications for the necessity of torture or some other bullshit as a government. So it just seems, the hypocrisy just is so glaring. We haven't been able to deal as a country with this problem in some sort of rational way. We can't negotiate our way out of problems. We have to sit there and blow something up. And so how the hell can you complain when some citizen decides to do, the same thing? I don't think you can complain. You can cry and whine and be a hypocrite. You're very good at doing that. But I don't think you have a right to complain about it, because you sort of asked for it. You're showing the world how to behave. You're showing them how to be an asshole. And the asshole blows back on you. Oh, big surprise. Anyway, so the other one, then, there was this infinite failure. And I did spell failure wrong, but who cares? Well, some people apparently do care. It's their problem. Anyway, yeah. So this kind of, another, I think, is really important kind of video, in the sense that, this philosophical argument that we have somewhere to go implies, connected to also the idea that people think, anyway, that life is something the universe does as a function. And you could argue that if the universe has been universing, big bangs, expansions, contractions forever, or some kind of mechanism like this, if this isn't a unique in-time kind of mechanism, that there's something unique about this something versus the nothing that was forever before it, or something. Like this is some sort of one-time only error. It's a theoretical possibility, but it's hard to know. I mean, one would just assume that because we are here, that we are hearing this is what the universe does sometimes. We're here. But the problem is that everyone who said these words, we're here, every time it's been said, doesn't go anywhere, obviously. For an infinite amount of time in the past, there's been nobody who was capable of taking control of the system and, conforming it to an intelligent construct where it would ensure things like justice and fairness and decency, and wouldn't let insidiously horrible things happen and, play God, so to speak. Nothing's been able to get to the God chair in all of infinite time in the past. But yeah, I might argue that time does collapse when you do the singularity, when the universe contracts back to a single point again. Time will stop. But is it relevant if it's going to expand again? It doesn't matter if there's no time in between, if there's an infinite number of expansions. So, I mean, that's the only problem. There's no way of knowing what happens before. There's no way of knowing what happens outside of our universe. I mean, it is a ponder. The one thing we do know is that nothing in all of everything has ever taken control, because quite obviously there's no controller. Crude forces are in control. except here on Earth where we're in control. And unfortunately most people are controlled by their crude forces, their crude mechanisms. Which sort of brings me to, somebody posted I guess it was a response comment to that Ideas guy who's an asshole. Well, he posted some jackass remark on my video, and I just said, oh, fuck you, I'm just so sick of your disrespect. It's the Bandit guy from Stickham and Tiny Chat. And so I deleted his comments and blocked him. Well, anyway, somebody responded to his comment and said something like, there is no group selection in evolution. And then posted a link to a Stanford University lecture, which I did listen to, but I fell asleep, halfway through it. So I haven't finished that yet. Let's go here. Should be here. No, it's here. Oh, the hospital day. I have to do that too. Yeah, this is at Stanford. Okay, anyway. So, and it has this guy, whatever he is, funny beardy guy, who's pretty good, but I just find the argument kind of empty. I mean, quite obviously there's this selfish gene thing going on, and that all evolution takes place on this gene level. But as like beehives sort of demonstrate, your genetics can program very sophisticated external environments. So your selfish genes can project a very complex infrastructure. So it's the queen's DNA that creates the drones, creates the whole mission statement, creates all their behavior, creates all of that infrastructure that looks very hive-ish in terms of those individuals have no personal stake in the game anymore. And I think that does happen in a lot of animal populations. It just hasn't evolved all the way to that stage yet where they're overtly slaves, where the children are overt slaves. But it theoretically could. And I think in some populations that sort of demonstrate that there's this whole recessive thing that goes on. And even in high primates like orangutans, you have a very, it's a very unselfish in the sense that it's a very socially stimulated genetic code. And so the alpha male syndrome only happens to certain males because certain triggers. So they have a certain success in youth, they get the certain hormones, they grow bigger, their bones get bigger, their whole body changes. And the ones who are opposite, who are the weaklings or whatever, that doesn't get triggered and they stay small and runty and disposable. And so their genetic code no longer has much viability. But the key is it doesn't really matter because they were produced by the same mother, or a similar mother could produce. She could have two sons, and one ends up alpha, one ends up not beta. So the code is the same in both of them, and it's just external triggers that dictate what they turn into, and chemical triggers. And so I just think there has to be some, I mean, maybe it's not explicitly group selection, but it is in a sense, because like a herd of seals, for example, would be competing against another herd of seals, against another tribe, or whatever you want to call them, gang. And they're going to compete over resources and all this other kind of stuff, and there's going to be pressures that are group dynamic pressures on the dominant DNA. And the dominant DNA is in all of them. It's just that they end up recessing. The seals do the same thing. A lot of seals do the same thing as the orangutan example, where certain males go into alpha phase and get bigger and stronger to totally own the territory. And if they get killed, some other alpha will take their place and go through the same chemical changes. So anyway, I don't want to get into a whole thing on that, but it's sort of annoying. So anyway, Hospital Day guy made this stupid, ignorant, lazy, sloppy video, titled Feynman and I Take Issue with Virtue Ethics of Inmendham and Snake Pilskinist. Well, anyway, me and Snake Pilskinist have very few ethics in common. He's basically some kind of Randian, selfish, Darwinian, the DNA will tell me what to do kind of moron. And I quite obviously have, am arguing that our knowledge base reveals a better truth to us, and our nature is no longer should be, ought to be, a controlling factor in what our behavior will be and what we ought to do. So whether we feel like doing it is sort of irrelevant. What we feel like doing is not the issue. It's what we can, how well we can ethically navigate the environment. Fewest, and the bottom line is the end result. So virtue is a fairly irrelevant. Obviously, you need to understand to do right, but virtue implies that somehow built into your physique, rather than it is just an acknowledgement of your obligation. So it's more like obligation ethics than virtue ethics. And it's just, like I said, it's just sloppy and cheap video making. No quotes. And then he ends up with a final statement saying, I am unfamiliar with your stance on rights of man. You know, I made 4,000 videos. And that's not even, you don't have to be familiar with my stance. You made an accusation, you should back it up with evidence. So you should have some evidence to back up your accusation, shithead, like direct quotes. And then I could point out how you don't have any direct quotes, that you would have to extract them from context, and I could clearly point out that, see, he just took that out of context, perverted it for his purposes, because he'll find no video where I say what he's implying I've said, because he's a weasel and a cunt. I'm sorry if I've misrepresented. Well, this I'm sorry shit is just a bunch of crap. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, you malign somebody, categorize them, pigeonhole them, and do it based on no evidence, not one single quote, and then you're going to say you're sorry? I mean, I don't know how you could possibly do anything other than misrepresent me, you fucking asshole. I have had a question brewing for a time with regard to your philosophy. Well, whatever. Ask the question then, shit for brains. That's what you do. If you have a question, you ask it. If you can make it coherent. Hopefully you reply. Hopefully if you reply, you can clear up my misunderstandings about your general thoughts on rights. Why would I have general thoughts on rights? I mean, isn't that kind of silly? General thoughts on rights? I mean, rights are specific. They're not general. There's no general thoughts on rights. What do you want me to say? Something like, well, I mean, there's no way I can. I mean, rights are something we build out of different agendas. I could argue that you have obligations that are, like the Constitution might say, inalienable, fundamental, and there are some that are just social contract necessity. So if you want to argue what rights do we have because of social contract necessity, agreements we make with each other on a temporary or, you know, okay, until I decide to fuck you over. Yes, I'll agree, I'll shake your hand until it's time for me to say, fuck you. Okay, and it's time for us to have a war or something. Obviously, we negate social contract rights at any moment because circumstances dictate. So they're circumstantial rights at best. And that's sort of the point. I mean, ultimately what I'm saying is there's one truth in the universe. You either define it right or you define it wrong. You either act in its interest or you act against its interest of that logic math. You either get it right or you get it wrong. And if you get it right, yeah, it doesn't really matter in terms of methodology, whether you violate some rights to do right. You know, it just doesn't matter. If the end result is you got the job done. I mean, if I could win the war by violating rights of 6 people with 6 people, and I can save 2 million people dying or something, just obvious that you do it. It's just sensible, utilitarian math. But anyway, I don't want to get in a whole argument about that. I mean, to say that generally on rights is just silly, because there are so many subtleties to what defines a fair fight. You know, I would argue that if you have to resort to torture to accomplish a goal, even if it's a great goal, it just doesn't matter. There's no point in playing a game that requires that. So there's certain things that are non-starters if you have to do them to maintain or to gain your success. So winning at any cost, I wouldn't say works. Even though, as a practical matter, again, I'm going to argue that it's utilitarian math. But it's utilitarian in the context that you can't impose it. There is something worse about extracting an innocent victim and imposing the harm on them versus extracting somebody who was willing to risk, who was willing to play a game with somebody else's welfare and imposing a harm on them. One could be argued to say they have sort of contracted for some harm, where the other person hasn't contracted for any harm. And so that would make a difference. So anyway, there's no point in saying general thoughts on rights. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, unless you want me to say, generally, I think rights fit into two categories: fundamental rights and social contract rights. I think fundamental rights are fundamental, and I think social contract rights are rewritable based on changes in circumstances. Yeah. So anyway, and I asked you a direct question you didn't answer. I mean, I asked you to defend your statement. You know, that you implied that I somehow said dumb people shouldn't have rights, where I have defended exactly the opposite, as a matter of social contract, really, more as a matter of being pragmatic. I don't think you can come up with an IQ test to give it voting booths that's going to be really fair, so it's almost like don't even bother trying to do that. But I do think that people are incompetent. There is such a thing as incompetence, and incompetence should be excluded from participation where possible. I mean, there's just no point in letting incompetence pollute competence. It's just no point. So anyway, by the way, if you deny that ignorance do you deny that ignorance creates incompetence? So why don't you answer my direct question? So anyway, I just thought the Hustler Day was rude, and the video was ignorant and empty and vacuous and pointless. So fuck you and such. Anyway, wow, 25 minutes. Sorry. Alright, so 10 minutes of whatever, the show, clips, and we'll call it a video. Another long video. But anyway, whatever. Too bad. So we don't come up with a better democracy, in a sense. Yeah, we're sort of doomed, because there's too many frustrated people, there's too much hate, and there's no vehicle to channel it through except violence. And this ain't gonna work. You know, we can't keep doing this war thing. I mean, everybody's got to know that. I mean, if I was in North Korea, the last place I'm going to put my nuclear bomb is on a missile, right? I'm going to put it in a crate of marijuana and send it to New York. You know, pick up my cell phone, blow it up, and you're not even going to know where it came from. You're not going to find an axle with a serial number. You know, you're going to have no idea who did it. You're going to be nuking the Arabs, and I'll be sitting in North Korea laughing my ass off.
Might not be the best thing to say while the federal marshals are watching.
Yeah.
But I'd like to bring it back to the point that you made about having either big brother government or big brother corporations. I think that's a really interesting one. It's one that we've kind of come up against with, the CISPA, I can't remember, the SOPA, and the other, legislation that they've tried and currently are pushing through. And it's a big debate. I mean, we, I think, give up a lot of our freedoms for convenience. To bring it back to the apathy point that I had made earlier, people just don't really care, and I think it's because, they have other things going on in their lives. We can go back to the really, things we always kind of reference that people do that waste time, like Facebook, or wasting time watching television, so on and so forth. But there's other things too. I mean, people have jobs, people have bills, people have kids, and of the day and age that we live in. And I might be wrong about this. I mean, I'm young. I'm not necessarily a history major, but it seems like right now, in our current time, we are having a lot of these types of events. Mass murders, shootings, especially here in the United States. I mean, this last year or so has been pretty terrible in respect to things like that. And I think that the public is developing habits in terms of how they respond to these things. That we're no longer really thinking about it as much as we used to. Like any human being, when exposed to something over and over and over again, they begin to find a certain way to react with it, to cope with it. And I think that a large part of our media and the people who influence it, the way that they have found to cope with these things is to find someone to blame right away. And, everyone wants to throw their hat in the ring as to who that might be, even though it is a severely inappropriate conversation to have.
Yeah, well, look at all the time they spent on the Pope, picking a Pope. I mean, the media is whores for anything that people will consume, and people want to consume this. People are dead, there's blood, blah, 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 let's all get excited, and people are watching it like they're watching a sporting event,
Yeah, that's really, my condolences and my thoughts go out to the people who actually, have to deal with this on a first-hand basis. But, it is a little disgusting to see the media kind of treat it, like you said, like a sporting event. In terms of the blame game, I mean, if, it's hard to even say that this is...
Could have fucking, excuse my French, you could have paved Africa with $2 trillion. I mean,
exactly.
It's grotesque that, what we allow things to turn into. But, I mean, I know there would be a long conversation to have, but, I mean, I really don't like this whole anti-government nonsense. If you're going to make accusations against the government, then prove them. You know what I mean? But all this, every single thing that takes place, they got to make up some kind of story and some kind of nonsense and all this truther stuff, and it's, it's really, really obnoxious.
It doesn't really seem like there's a solid aim toward these anti-government people. It just all seems sort of random, like they just desperately need to spew out one cockamamie hypothesis or another.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't like our democracy, and I don't like the two-party system. But I really don't like this idea that we can do without having a civilization. And the government's how we're going to be civilized. We got to work through government. We can't work without it. So we have to work within the system. And all these people talking like we somehow can just, we'll just walk away. We'll just have anarchy. We'll go back to states' rights. I mean, that stuff really scares me. That people want to go back to some kind of...
the game. Don't knock the board over. I agree with you 100%. I'm no anarchist. And
of course. All right. Inmendham, it's your turn now. We just need a noun. Like, it can be any type of noun that comes to your mind.
Yeah, banana. Banana. It always works, right?
Banana? Sure. Let's go with that.
it's better than when I was quick.
All right, let's see. All right, I have to come up with a verb here. Shit. We're gonna come up with shit.
Shitting. You know.
Shitting. Who doesn't love a good old relieving shit? All right. So. Yes, Joe. Yes.
There's a bomb? There's a bomb in the room. No. Oh, sorry. No, okay.
Joe, where'd you buy this TV at?
Yeah.
Amazon. Yep, exactly. All right. So, James, we are looking for a noun now.
Jeez. Gary's got me thinking about phallic objects. Oh, God, I can't help it. Dildo. Dildo.
all I can think about. Oh my God, I'm loving how this is turning out already. All right, Gary, we need a verb.
Verb. Yeah, I had something in my head. Now it's they're all gone. All the good ones. Verbs. I was thinking of healthy. That's way too much, Gary. You can't take all of that. You can't do it. No, don't do it, Gary. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's like with this one. This thing's huge.
Yeah, that's way too big for you. No, you're gonna hurt yourself.
Well, you know what? The other thing is I have on here too is the arms so I can move it around, and then also the.
You got a good distance though too. You're not that close right now, and I can hear you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm probably about I would say about 3 inches away from the microphone.
Yeah. That's not so bad.
Now, if I get really close,
your shot's good too. I mean,
yeah, but that's when you get the best radio voice, is when you get really close. That's what I found with mine. It's like I'm an inch away. It's really, really pure. Really nice. But who wants to talk like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
What's it called? The lapelels. You really need a. What is it? I forgot how to say it. You need that for the videos.
Yeah, just because, you know what, Will doesn't have to hold the mic the whole entire time, because he would put it down, pick it up. You would get a lot of...
That's kind of why I'm, scrunched over, too, because I'm leaning down, to the mic when I talk, things. I really got to get a stand again. I need a better one. Ooh.
Yeah, plus I would lose concentration on the show because my fucking hand would be getting tired, and I'd just be like, yeah, this is annoying.
But you know what, James? This microphone's only $25.
Well, oh, really?
Yeah, it's a Audio-Technica ATR something.
Damn.
Yeah, they're not expensive.
Affordable. That's very affordable.
Oh, yeah. My microphone, on the other hand, is about $250. But, but yeah, that is, but I used to have a MXL mic. This one right here, which is a side address microphone. And it worked okay, but you know what? It really wasn't meant for doing what I was doing. It was like a denser mic. It needed phantom power. And this is a dynamic microphone, so it doesn't need it. And it has a lot more noise rejection because I used to turn this thing on and you hear everything in the studio.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But I still have it there just in case we need it.
Oh, yeah, Inmendham, one thing I wanted to tell you was that you don't have to worry about censoring certain words that come to mind. You can go ahead and say fuck on this program.
Yeah.